Okay, guys, it's that time of the week again. Welcome back to another episode from the Fantasy Kickabout. And this week we are joined by Manchester United fan David Dent and a newcomer making his debut on the podcast, a Chelsea fan, Conor, Howlin. Both you guys are joining me, Gary Quinn, and we're here obviously to talk all things Premier League and especially over the weekend. But we might start, guys, and I will leave it open to you, Conor, as the Chelsea fan. We'll touch on Liverpool-Chelsea on the weekend. Obviously, the big talking point was the Reece James handball penalty. What is your take on it from a Chelsea's perspective, but also try to not be as kind of biased towards Chelsea, if possible? We give it a go anyways.
Fair. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think my initial reaction, as many of you will have seen, was very biased, but haven't had time to cool off, see replays, listen to other perspectives from other fans. Like, you know, I've had time to kind of calm down, relax, and think more about whether or not it was a fair decision or whatnot. And, you know, personally, it did completely change the tide of the game turned completely on that. Now, Chelsea they were in no means on top of the game, but I think had they continued playing the way they were slowly coming out on top. They'd gotten their goals. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe Havertz, was only trying to loop the header over, but you could see them growing in confidence as the game went on. But it really did turn the game around completely into basically, parking the bus, stopping, the unbelievable attackers Liverpool had. And, you can be proud of the performance that, preceded the red card and even followed it. But yeah, I feel, even having had my time to look at it, I think it was still an unfair decision. Now, based on, kind of what you had said to me previously in the day about another penalty incident in the past, now I know this was goal line and that one wasn't. They looked like carbon copies of one another, and maybe, given another referee who would actually look at the VAR screen for more than a quick glance, it might have not been given, or even if it had been given, it wouldn't have been a red card. So, I kind of sum all that up after all my rambling. I would say, having had time to think, maybe it was still a penalty. Maybe the ref could have looked at the VAR screen a bit more, but no, it can't be refuted that it completely changed the game for Liverpool, to Liverpool's advantage. But yeah, I'd like to hear what kind of United fans have to think about that one, really, because you'd have your own feelings about any decisions going Liverpool's way anyway. So I'd like to hear what your own thoughts were.
Just before, obviously, we go over to you, Dave. The incident, obviously, Conor was referring to, we just sent it to each other today. With the incident last season between Southampton and Aston Villa, I think it was Danny Ings that took a shot and Matt Cash took his leg out and the ball took the slightest bit of a deflection off his thigh onto his hand, which, from my perspective, was preventing a goal scoring opportunity because the ball was obviously goal bound. It was only Matt Cash in the way of obviously the goal and obviously the goalkeeper. So that's the incident that we're referring to in comparison to Reece James's handball on the line. Just, Dave, before I get your side of things, just going to throw it out there. For example, obviously, Mane played the ball towards the goal. Reece James put out his leg. The ball moved upwards. This was something that they mentioned on Sky Sports. The ball moved upwards. So the question was that denying a goal scoring opportunity? Because if the ball was going up, it potentially hits the crossbar, potentially goes over the bar. Obviously, it's all subjective. You've no idea what actually could potentially happen in that situation. But I'm just throwing another spanner in the work there for you to give your take on it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be less fair to Liverpool than Conor was. For me, it wasn't a red card, and for me it wasn't a penalty. Like I can understand why the penalty was given, But the thing is, the using your hand to prevent a goal scoring opportunity or preventing a goal, for me, has to require some degree of intention. Now, in Reece James, I looked at the Matty Cash one, and they are similar. But I find if you look at the Reece James incident, he tries to keep his arm down at first, and he lifts his thigh to stop the ball from going in, and inadvertently his hand comes up. It kind of has to. It would be different if he stuck his hand out and like, we're not talking about Henry sort of handball. We're talking about he's lifted his arm, he's lifted his thigh up to prevent the ball from going in, and his arm has come out. The shot hit his thigh and then changed direction and hit his arm. So it's there can't, for me anyway, there needs to be, they were saying on Sky Sports, if he gives the penalty, he has to give the red card, and that I don't agree with. You guys might remember a couple of years ago, Luis Suarez intentionally in a World Cup against...
I think everyone remembers that.
yeah. Right. He knew that ball was going in and threw out his arm, and to no matter what, okay, he gave away a penalty, which was then missed. That was his intention. His intention was to, this isn't the same. And with the same with Matty Cash and with Reece James, both stick out their leg, and the direction of the ball changes. Now, you can say that when the direction of the ball changes, a hand stops it from going in, and that's denying a goal scoring opportunity. And that is true, but that is not the player's intention. And that has to be a decisive factor, because, as Conor said, the whole game changed. Chelsea were more dominant. They had plenty of chances. Liverpool, put out a decent performance, but at the end of the day, they didn't score after the penalty. The penalty is what has robbed Chelsea of 3 points. They obviously had to park the bus. They then had to consolidate, but they were on top, and Mason Mount was only inches away from putting them ahead a couple of minutes beforehand. So, it's one of these ones that you can be talked around in circles about it. I don't think, specifically on the red card, the red card to me suggests intention, and I don't think there was an intention there. And we saw last season, there was the whole thing of, if the ball comes off another part of you and hits your hand, then it's not deemed to be an intentional handball. So I don't know what's changed there.
Yeah, so the only difference compared to the Southampton Villa Matty Cash handball is the fact that Reece James is standing on the goal line. That's the only difference that I can see.
Well, the only thing I would say is, for Reece James, his Matty Cash was far more spread out. Like, he was, I don't want to call it in a natural position, because I don't think it is, but Reece James' legs were pretty close together. He wasn't stretching, he wasn't sprawling. He just, if you slow it down, but when he lifts his leg the first time, as he shifts his body across, you can see him trying to tuck his arm down to keep it down. But once he lifts his thigh, his arm goes with it. It's just natural.
That's what I was going to say. That's the natural movement. If you lift your leg up, your arm or hand is automatically going to lift up. I think where people will debate, and again, I think Dermot Gallagher did it on Sky Sports News today, saying it was the scoop of the arm. But again,
that was after. You see, that's what they're not. The scoop, like, I can completely understand that, but the fact is, it's only gotten to that point because it's come off his thigh first. So he's stuck out his thigh and it's gone into like a couple of different places. But yeah, as I say, I think intention is important, and unfortunately, it's not kind of considered as far as if it's a penalty, then that has to go hand in hand with a red card. I don't believe that. They could have given the penalty and not sent him off, because there's been plenty of these situations in the past where there's been a foul without it necessarily being a red card. So yeah, that's my take. But it changed the whole changed the whole game, and Chelsea would have had to have been really brave to go toe to toe with Liverpool as it was. Like, Mendy put on a super performance for what it was, and they had them on the cosh. But before the red card, I would have had Chelsea to win that game. They were doing well.
Yeah, just last one, obviously, on the penalty situation. For me, penalty, purely because obviously the hand prevented the ball going into the goal, but wasn't a red card for me, because I think it is a natural thing to do, to move your hand with the ball. But just going back to you, Conor,
just a quick question before you go on. Remember last season there was the Dyer penalty, where the ball came off the back of Dyer's head and it hit his hand, and a penalty was given. Right now, we all thought, well, that's absolute nonsense, because one, he doesn't see the ball coming, but it's come off his head and then it's come off his hand. He has no idea. That's kind of like giving him a red card for the same thing, because he had no intention of handling the ball, but for the way it's deflected, it's bounced off. There has to be a certain degree of, for me anyway, there has to be a certain degree of intention, because if it's just...
Yeah, and David, I don't remember that one actually. Was Dyer on or near the line when that happened? That could be the only kind of difference that I might see there.
No. I mean, they both... The Dyer, it was a corner or cross.
Dyer was on the edge of his box pretty much, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the thing was that he went up for the ball, didn't see where it was going. I think it hit the back of his head. It kind of like he went up and both of them kind of went for, and it came off the back of his head. But this is what I'm saying. Okay, yes, you're right. It's not on the goal line, and that does change it. But it's because it's on the goal line. Does that mean Reece James specifically tried to prevent it? Because for me, he doesn't. He makes every effort to not lift his hand up, and then it's just
and then I suppose, just playing devil's advocate here, with the whole, whether it was intentional or not, Reece James is the only person that will actually know whether it was intentional or not. That's it, really.
Okay. Well, you can, if we put this situation next to the Suarez situation, they're not comparable, because Suarez. Well, Suarez knew what he was doing. You know that there are some cases where we've seen players. Ollie Solskjaer was sent off for intentionally committing a professional foul. Everybody knew what he was doing. Way back when, I can't remember who he took down, but he took down somebody through on goal. Sometimes you see these situations and you know what the intention is. You know that there's something involved, and whether it warrants a straight red card. Like, I was looking at Reece James, and he was, I really did. I felt sorry for him. I don't think there was any degree of intention to try and stop it. So,
Right, we'll move on from the penalty incident, because again, I'd say we could spend a whole podcast discussing the ins and outs of the penalty incident. It'd be great actually maybe to get our kind of Martin Maloney's perspective, the referee that we had on a couple of weeks ago, his perspective on a situation like that, where he would obviously be aware of the rules, be aware of the laws, etc., etc. And maybe we can get him on maybe when we have a couple of more incidents quite similar. I'm sure we will have plenty. But Conor, you obviously mentioned about Chelsea's kind of togetherness once they went down to 10 men, and you could see a real fight, a real kind of passionate team togetherness at the end, where they all came together, they all hugged each other on the final whistle. That was something different that you probably haven't seen with Chelsea teams over the years. But also I wanted to ask you about Christensen's performance at the back, and also what did you make of Romelu Lukaku's performance, albeit he was playing against four defenders, four good defenders, and playing off scraps pretty much.
Yeah, so it was kind of based on what you said first about there's a real togetherness there, when in the past there wouldn't have been, like I recall the days when Ballack and Drogba used to fight over who used to get to take the free kicks, or Drogba and Lampard used to fight over who got to take the penalties when they were in the running for golden boot each. And there just used to be things like that would make you think, these lads, they're just, they're not a real unit. But you can really see now, since Tuchel's taken over, that they all kind of seem to be, in it together. And I don't know, was it an overnight thing? Was it something that was there under Lampard and just wasn't being tapped into enough? There was a worry maybe that with all of the players leaving during the summer, now they were bench players, third team players who'd never make it into the 11. But the likes of even Kurt Zouma leaving, someone who you'd know from following him online as a huge presence, like losing characters like that can really have an effect on your team. But just from the performance, you could tell there was, they had to dig in, they had to rely on one another. There's kind of like a telepathic understanding between Jorginho and Kante, or Jorginho and Kovacic, or Kovacic and Kante, that, it just kind of builds a nice spine along the team, and everyone works for each other. It's fantastic to see. Most surprisingly, I think what you said there is, Christensen is after coming on leaps and bounds. Like, this is a chap who was shipped out on loan again and again, and this is a lad, he'll be a squad player. He might play every now and again if someone's injured. And just since Tuchel's taken over, now he had a few runs every now and again. I remember in the reverse fixture last year, Liverpool and Chelsea, he got himself sent off for taking Mane down. And just seeing he's so much more disciplined now, and that could be through the coaching of Tuchel. A lot of people put it down to Thiago Silva coming in and being the experienced head. He's done it in so many different countries before, and for the national team, he's just a stalwart himself. And while his legs may be going, he's probably imparting this bit of knowledge on the younger lads. Like, this is a player who, you would have written off a few months ago before Tuchel came in, and seeing him now getting man of the match. I think he was officially the man of the match for us. I would have given it to Mendy, as David was saying. He was fantastic on the day. Honestly, I don't know where this character's come from in Christensen. He's on another level these days, and long may it continue, because I'll be honest, I didn't rate the chap for a long time, and look at him now. He's I don't know, he's surprising everyone at the moment, which is great to see. And you could even see how it's not just the Chelsea thing, because he was fantastic for Denmark during the Euros as well. I think he scored like an absolute cracker of a goal. Was it against Russia? He scored that goal against. Like, that was like just the team performances. He's really built himself up as a player. And it's nice. It's a nice change of pace, instead of going in for your Jules Koundés, who we'll probably talk about later on, who may not be coming anymore, or your Zumas, who was a real powerhouse. Like, these players who may not be joining or have left now, you're like, we're selling, like, or we're not buying these people we need. But when you look at Christensen, you think you don't really. So that was great to see. But then on the last fella, then Lukaku, obviously dream debut, well, second debut, I suppose. You wouldn't really, you don't like to think about his original spell with Chelsea, really, with 15 appearances and no goals. But playing against kind of an Arsenal team that are in shambles at the moment, he was, there was always going to be a goal there. And I don't think we can kind of judge how he's been yet. Not for a good while anyway, I'd say. But when you're picking up off the scraps, and basically all he was trying to do was, hold the ball up for a second, try and get runners down the wings or off his back. And the men weren't coming because there was one fewer man to attack and to push. And as good as Alonso is as a winger, like, he doesn't have the legs on him anymore to be bombing up and down for 90 minutes. So I think Lukaku, he was unfortunate that maybe his main supply line in Havertz had to be taken off. But even then, you could tell himself and Virgil van Dijk could have had a great little competition between the two of them on the day had it gone to 90 minutes of 11 versus 11. But sadly, we didn't see that now. But it'll be interesting to see, what kind of performances he puts in. I think we've Aston Villa next against Aston Villa, who are actually, coming on a serious amount in recent times. So I've been not sure people, predicted him to be, the Golden Boot winner. Now I put him down myself in our little predictions for Golden Boot winner, but I don't know if he has that in him still. It's the jury's still out for me on him, but just I've been impressed with he did all he could against Liverpool, really, and just hopefully hope to see more.
Dave, what's your take on Chelsea from obviously a Manchester United perspective? They'll obviously be thereabouts challenging for a title, hopefully with ourselves as well. What have you made of Chelsea in the first 3 games of the season?
I think they look like champions in the making. If not this season, next. I think Tuchel's been a super appointment. I don't know what it is about him, but he has turned things around. I think you and I agreed at the time we thought it was a weird appointment, but in the same token, Lampard laid some pretty good foundations, and he's just kicked them on. I think Lukaku is kind of like the final piece to the puzzle kind of thing. Kai Havertz is stepping up. We're seeing a bit more from him this season than we did last season. But their back line and their midfield they've nicked Mendy for 22 million. That's an absolute steal, considering like it's a quarter of what they spent on your man Kepa. As for Laqueta, it didn't get mentioned in Conor's rundown, but I think he's an absolute heartbeat. He's fantastic. He's got a bite in him. I know he's not got the legs as much anymore, but he's a fighter. He's a winner. So when you've got him, you've got Silva, you've got Christensen, you've got Alonso, you've got Jorginho, you've got Conte, the Duracell bunny. Like they've got just this excellent I want to say a spine of a team now because they've got Lukaku up top now, but like he's able to move it around. He's able to do kind of like what Pep does with Pep Roulette, where he can take people in and put people out without there being a huge change or dip in quality. So, he's I don't know. I think they look really tough. And I mean, listen, they played Liverpool in their third game, and they looked stronger on the day. And to look stronger at Anfield is a statement. So listen, I think when it comes down to it, they'll certainly be up there. I think they have more about them than City do. And I think they have a little bit more in strength and depth than Liverpool do. And the thing is, it's their character. It's they're bleeding for each other, and that's definitely something we haven't seen from them in years. But they're together and they're a unit, and that on top of everything else, they're impressive. And I think they're going to be really dangerous this year.
So moving away from obviously Chelsea, Liverpool, Conor did mention imparting wisdom, imparting knowledge. Viva Ronaldo, he's coming back to Old Trafford. Dave, do you want to take us through how you're feeling throughout kind of Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, on the whole Ronaldo saga, the whole transfer behind it?
My days, it was the most emotional roller coaster that I have been on for a long time, for a minute. Like it was intense. Like on the Thursday night, I was actually fine. I was just like going, listen, this is transfer fluff. There is no way after his, Ronaldo's legacy and his, how much he claimed his heart bled for United and everything, all of the Fergie stuff. On Thursday night, I was just like, listen, City aren't getting Kane, so let's just throw Ronaldo's name into the mix. And then as Friday morning just started to unfold, I was like, I was just like borderline cold sweats. I couldn't. And of course, the majority of us follow Fabrizio Romano, and like he was saying like the deal's on the table, like he's ready to go to City. He's turning up at the Juve stadium, and he's saying goodbye to his teammates, and he's just all of it. And my other half is borderline interested in football, so long as it doesn't get me depressed or angry. And like she knows I've loved Ronaldo. No matter where he went, when he went to Madrid and when he went to Juventus, I always kind of supported him. I was always a fan of his. So I was just saying, listen, I don't want to say it, but if he does go to City, if he does put all of this aside, because I was just in this place where my head was going around, and I was going, why? But like, why City? Why would he need to go? Why does he need to go anywhere? He's in Serie A. He's playing with the most successful club in their history, in Serie A history. He's okay. He's lost the league just this season gone, but you go back and win it again, and he was top scorer last season, so you get it again. He's getting 25 million euros a year after tax. Like, there's no real reason. He hasn't won the Champions League with them, so like there's challenges to be achieved. Like, why would you need to leave Italy, come back to Manchester, and go to City? And of course, you and I were texting each other, and we were like was he offered to United first and they didn't want him, and like it's just a thing that nobody wants him except Man City, and he's just so like this loop de loop was going round and round and round. And then I think I gave the babies a bath. That took like an hour and a half.
That's a first on the podcast here, Dave.
Yeah. I've twins, and they have to be washed at the same time. So like an hour and a half later, I picked up my phone, and there was this thing of like the thing had flipped. Like it had just, City weren't interested anymore, and United had a deal on the table. And not only was the deal on the table, but it was basically agreed. And of course, I couldn't just do nothing, so we ended up bringing the kids for a walk out in Portmarnock, and I'm kind of like edgy for every time my phone buzzes in my pocket, and of course we're in our WhatsApp group, and we're debating whether United fans should be feeling aggrieved or betrayed or upset, or all the ranges of emotions. And like it was just bizarre. And I eventually I'm out on the coast road somewhere between Baldoyle and Portmarnock, and I get this screenshot sent to me of an announcement on United. And like all of this, I'm playing back to 2 hours beforehand when I'm saying to my other half, if he goes to City, fuck him. I will no longer support him. He will break my heart. And like there's me too, and of course it comes across to her as me just being flip floppy, like the guy who set his Ronaldo shirt on fire and was like, no. So it was just a crazy, crazy day. But my God, what a climax! It was just incredible.
Conor, just before I come to you, I'm just going to throw it out there that there was 500 plus messages in that WhatsApp group come on throughout the day on Friday.
For a neutral, it was torture.
I could imagine because you're like, I suppose we'll get onto it now in a second, whether you wanted him to go to City or to United, etc., because I know some Liverpool fans were saying that they didn't want him to go to City because they saw them City as a closer competitor for the title this season. But just from my perspective, Friday just felt like a dream. Come the end of the day, the excitement. I in a way, I kind of didn't know how to feel. I think I said it to you, Dave, in one of the messages I sent you. I kind of didn't know how to feel because that morning I kind of had accepted that, okay, Ronaldo's going to City. He has his reasons for going because Juventus potentially can't afford to keep him. They need to get him off the wage list. And if United went in or didn't go in for him, he didn't really have many other options apart from potentially Paris Saint-Germain, which I don't think any of us would have liked to see him go there, but we would have probably preferred to see him go there than obviously to Man City. Of course, you're buzzing. Of course, you're just excited to what he'll bring. He'll bring so much to that Man United team. He will raise the level amongst a majority of players, including hopefully Fred. But it still kind of feels a bit surreal, and until he's actually holding the shirt, the official unveiling, I think that's when it'll actually really, really hit me. But I just think it's obviously a super, super signing. I still think Man United need one more player, but that's obviously a debate for another day or later on when we talk about different transfers. Conor, go on, tell us from a neutral's perspective of the ups and downs and whether you would have preferred Ronaldo to be headed to the blue side of Manchester.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting part of the tale anyway if that had happened. But for me, genuinely, it was just pure entertainment, seeing like the ups and downs of emotions from the different sides of the group. Like Liverpool fans may have been happy, they may have been sad, like they were just having goes at the United fans who were like in throes of the most extreme emotions as the day goes on, like from utter despair to sheer jubilation. Like within, I think it turned in 7-8 hours. I think it was the early afternoon that he'd been announced, I think, wasn't it? But for me, I always had a weird kind of love affair with Cristiano Ronaldo in that when he was at United, I despised him, absolutely hated the chap because for me, he was the difference between United winning the leagues, that 3 in a row, and Chelsea winning that 3 in a row. Chelsea winning those leagues because they had ran you so close every time. But then when he went to Madrid, I turned off the Chelsea fan and just actually looked for the player that was there. And personally, for me, he's the GOAT. For me, I was never in the Messi camp once I kind of, shaken off the Ronaldo hate that came with, just not liking Man United. And then seeing him go to Juve and just continue to deliver again and again and again. 101 goals for Juventus in a similar amounts of appearances, like 120 appearances. Like the lad's 36 years old and he's showing no signs of letting up, of stopping, of just, kind of losing a dip in form or anything. And the prospect of him going to either City of United, like aside from the entertainment side of seeing how it was affecting the fans, it scared the life out of me, so it did, because City are a striker away from winning the league again, like a proper 20-something goals a season striker. And they won it last year, I think, due to A, Liverpool's injuries, B, the lack of squad depth in the other teams and, the COVID scares and everything. But just they didn't have like a recognised striker. You had Jesus coming in, you had Aguero coming in every now and again. But, their sheer wealth of attacking midfielders, just pushed them up into, first place and kept them there. But this year, you've seen how everyone strengthened. United are so much stronger now. Arsenal, despite spending as much as they've spent, wouldn't be considered in that bracket. Chelsea have spent money. Liverpool have strengthened in their defence, which was where they were kind of quite leaky last year. And just thinking, City were to get him, it would be a nightmare. But it would be funnier if he went to City than United. But then the opposite happened now, and I have to answer how I think about him going to United. And again, it's terrifying. Now, you said yourself, Gary, that United are lacking in one more player, and I don't think it's a secret that's probably a defensive midfield player. And that would kind of, just like how we said how Chelsea are developing a spine, United could have a serious spine if they had a defensive midfielder there. And, with Ronaldo at the top, spearheading that attack, like, he's going to get you goals. Like, whether it's assists or goals himself, like, the lad just delivers. And just the fact that if United could get that one extra player, I reckon, like, they're definitely challengers, if not silent favourites for me this year. Like, I'm terrified about the prospect of playing United at Old Trafford, like, and the lads on the wings, the attacking midfielders you have there, like Fernandes and Ronaldo play international together and now play club level together. And that's a terrifying prospect. Like they'll spend so much time together, they'll know each other's game in and out. It's going to be scary. So, well, yeah, it'll be absolutely terrifying.
Dave, I'll take it back to Sunday afternoon at Molineux United, obviously against Wolves. Greenwood comes up with the winning goal in the 80th minute. Pretty much said, Ronaldo, you're not taking my shirt, you're taking someone else's on that team. Obviously, it was pretty much a smash and grab from United. Pretty poor performance. But we might just start with obviously the big talking point, the big incident in the game, which was Pogba's tackle or lack of tackle, if some people might see it that way, on Ruben Neves. Did you believe it was a foul on Ruben Neves? And do you think United got away with one?
Yeah, you and I disagreed on this, and my opinion on it actually hasn't changed. I've looked at it again, and this sort of stuff kind of happens after these games where somebody screen grabs a moment, and it can always look awful, and to fit your argument, I guess. I don't feel like it was enough. I felt like it was a 50-50 challenge. I felt both players went in. I don't agree with Souness that it was a leg breaker. I don't believe that he went over the ball. I think they both clearly went to challenge for the ball. I think Neves saw Pogba's boot and chose to swing his leg in full force. Like, he didn't have to. Like, he could have easily played it to the right or tried to control it, but he swung his boot in. And whatever about intention, there was the slightest of nudges from the tip of Pogba's toe that pushed aside Neves' shin guard. And then I know we talked about this a lot. Neves' reaction made a huge difference, because he looked around to see if the referee was there. He saw that he was there. He took a step, and after the second step and saw where the ball was going, decided to drop on the ground. Now, I do take your point that Neves shouldn't have to go to ground to get awarded a free kick. But what I kept thinking was, from Mike Dean's angle, he's on Pogba's side of the challenge, and he sees Pogba going through. And after he sees Pogba going through, he sees Neves keep going. So I'm thinking to his mind that there was no contact, and Neves' reaction confirms it. So he takes a couple of steps, and of course Neves looks at him. So Neves doesn't help himself. He makes it look deliberate. He makes it look like he thought he was going to get a free kick. The whistle didn't blow, and saw the area that the ball was going in. His explanation was awful. Like it was a terrible explanation, but he just made it look like he could have gotten booked. Like Mike Dean could have booked him for the way he reacted. You know, maybe he could have gone to the screen and then checked it and everything else. But I think it's a 50-50 ball. Those sort of challenges go in all the time. I don't think there was any nastiness from Pogba. I don't think there was any intention to try and hurt him, and he didn't hurt him. And but did United get away with one? They got away with one as far as the performance was concerned. It's another one of these performances. We get them against Wolves regularly. We get them against Leicester regularly, where the midfield is just far too strong and dominant, and they just walk through. And that's exactly what happened. Like I'm a fan of Ruben Neves. I think he's a very, very tidy footballer. I would have swapped him, like on the game yesterday. If I could have swapped him for Fred, I would have done so in a heartbeat. And he's a bargain. United could sign him for 30 odd million. It really wouldn't break the bank. But I thought himself and Traore just ran through the United midfield, and we've come to expect these performances. Like nearly one in every 3 or 4 games, we get one like this. And listen, United will always create chances, and Varane's ball out to Greenwood was a beauty, and Varane was excellent. I thought the United defence actually played very, very well, but Varane in particular, his first game is in the Black Country. I thought he did very well. And if you give Greenwood a sniff, he's going to punish you more often than not. So, listen, it's one of these games where we always, when we do win them, we win them by 1. We don't win them by 3 or 4. So listen, a little bit of a smash and grab, but Wolves had plenty of chances. They could have had 2 or 3, but they didn't take their chances. And in the Premier League, that's where you get punished. So I won't feel too bad about it for too long.
Yeah, and I think it always comes down to that. You have to take your chances, and I suppose, thank God, Traore just has no end product. Otherwise, he would be an unbelievable player in terms of his pace, his power. If he was able to get a good cross in, make the right decision with a pass, or score a goal, I suppose. But
he's a complete bully. He is a complete bully. He is like terrifying. Like he bashed Shaw off the ball. He bashed, like, Wan-Bissaka isn't soft. He's not a soft player. But he went through some of them like they weren't even there. Like he's impressive till he gets to the byline, or he gets into the final third. He's just he's a monster.
Yeah. And just to finish up on obviously the penalty incident, Conor, I'll come to you now in a sec. But would you have seen it any different to Dave? Where I would have seen it, like, I genuinely think United got away with one. I think it could easily have been it should have been a free kick against Pogba. I don't think there was any intention. I don't think it was. He didn't go in to hurt him. I think he did go in for a 50-50 challenge, but just completely mistimed it, where his foot actually went over the ball. And I suppose you could point to the fact that, do you have to make contact for it to be a foul, or can it be considered a dangerous tackle in that instinct? It is a difficult one to know, but I do kind of feel that we got away with one. Like Dave said, I do think Ruben Neves didn't help himself, and at the end of the day, it was a dive from Ruben Neves after he ran on 2 or 3 yards and then threw himself to the floor. But do you, we'll obviously give you the final word on this, free kick or not a free kick?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like hearing David try to explain how, from the referee's perspective, what he saw is all he could see, and maybe going to VAR could have been the answer to it. But you often see in the other token, someone goes in for a 50-50 ball, gets the ball, but because of, how fast they're going or how hard they're going in, a free is given against them anyway, despite making contact with the ball. So I think it depends on the situation, really, like a lot of different factors, like, the intensity is a challenge, the height of the foot, all the different, things to really think about. But, the fact that, it was a genuine attempt to get the ball. For me, in a really genuine attempt to get a ball on the 50-50, you shouldn't really give a foul. You should maybe play advantage, and Neves ruined it for himself. So no free.
I think, sorry guys, I'm just going to throw something in. I said it last night, but if he had cleared the ball and it had gone to Traore, and Traore was herring down the pitch, you could nearly guarantee that Neves would have kept going, and he would have.
Oh, I agree on that.
Been up there to support him. So, there's the fact that he also said afterwards, and I guess we're looking at all this in hindsight, but the fact that he said that he went down because he saw where the ball had gone to, that's, again, like there's a certain degree of intention, in what players do. And retrospectively, if you're telling me that you put the ball there, that you made the clearance, and then because you saw the ball had gone to a dangerous area, that you then decided to drop, then that puts a bit of a negative buzz on it. So then I start to feel like it was the right decision. If you're going down just because of where the ball's gone to, then just on a little note, a deal's been announced for Dan James to go to Leeds. 28 million euro. What a bargain! That's a deal. That's fantastic.
Great return for United as well. Like, what did they initially
double
spend
the
on
money.
Profit on him. I think it was 15 million pounds. So it's definitely a profit on him, and I don't think any of us Man United fans would have pictured getting that sort of a deal for Dan James. So it is nice to see Man United being able to sell a player and do good business, because we have been praising obviously Liverpool and their dealings and their ability to sell players in the transfer market. Just speaking of transfer markets, we might move on to the team who spent the most in the transfer market so far in the Premier League. We give you the first word to you, Conor, obviously with Arsenal being Chelsea's London rivals, maybe not rivals anymore in terms of positions in the table, but
essentially not, no.
It's an absolute shambolic club at the moment. Even Maitland-Niles coming out today and having up on his social media about that he wants to go somewhere where he's wanted, and he wants to go somewhere that he plays football, and he tagged Arsenal in it. What do you think has gone wrong with Arsenal, or can you see them getting out of this with Arteta there, or can you see them getting rid of him and looking at Antonio Conte, for example?
It's such a weird situation with them, because they finished, is it 8th? They finished in 2 years in a row. So the general performance level isn't a surprise. It's just how everything at that club is in utter disarray right now. Like, the whole Super League thing got the Arsenal fans out against the Cronkies, who are just completely unwilling to sell the club. Like, there's 2 potential investors who wanted to buy controlling shares in that club, and the Cronkies just held on, and they thought, let's throw some money at this problem and buy whoever the sporting director, Adu, wants to sign. And this man cannot scout talent for his life. They spent the most money on, like, terrible to say, but mediocre players at best. Like you know, maybe your new first choice goalkeeper, but potentially not at the same time. Lukaku looks like a good investment for the future, but he's untried, he's untested. He's going to take a while to settle into that squad, and if everyone's playing poorly, that's not going to help either. So you have the owner, obviously, there's a problem. You have the sporting director not knowing how to scout potential players, and then you have kind of Arteta, who's more of a green manager. You know, you can tell that there's something going on with Maitland-Niles, especially, that it's proof there that players are being mishandled and mistreated, and it's coming from the top down, from the owner all the way down to the management and the coaching. And saying getting Arteta out could be of benefit to them, but it wouldn't fix the problem. It would only potentially be, you know, paving over the cracks in time for, like, especially if Conte were to come in. Like, Conte has his first season syndrome where he wins the league everywhere he goes in his first year. And Arsenal, I think that squad will be really, really adept at playing that three at the back with the wing backs on each side. But, you know, with a manager as volatile as Conte, who everything needs to be his say, he doesn't want to be first team coach. He wants to be the manager who has say over signings, he has say over everything that goes on, player in, player out, you know, their coaching schedules. If he were to be brought in, I think it would cause more damage, if anything. The club needs a complete overhaul, and, you know, first season they finish 8th, that's funny. That's grand. As a Chelsea fan, you can look at that and be like, Jesus, these were the Invincibles, like, not 20 years ago. Second season, you're like, okay, this is a bit, you know, still funny, obviously. You know, no European football, like, and, you know, Arsenal fans TV is a gift in itself, like, for the way they react. But now you have to feel sorry for the poor fans. Like, my God, like, their club is being absolutely, like, pulled apart at the seams by, like, you know, poor appointments in key decision-making positions. And, you know, would another manager help? Potentially. I reckon Arteta's days are definitely numbered. Now, it's been 3 games. They've played against Chelsea, who would be contenders. They played against City, who are contenders. So it's too early to judge, you know, how that will look for the rest of the year and if these new signings change anything. But I think you can tell, just based on last year's performances and how this year has started out, that Arteta he's a dead man walking, I think. And no matter any amount of new signings, that won't fix that for him, unfortunately.
Dave, could you see Antonio Conte coming into Arsenal and ruining his record of winning the league in his first season?
No, I don't think. Conte is a super manager, but he just doesn't fit. He doesn't fit Arsenal. You know, he just doesn't. If Tuchel had gone in, like Tuchel, you could see working. You could see his name escapes me, but he's the Bayern Munich coach now. He went from RB Leipzig.
Nagelsmann.
Yeah. So someone like that. There's a certain degree of I don't know, nearly charisma that you need to associate with being a manager of Arsenal, and Conte would just go in and just like a bull in a china shop. But maybe that would help. I mean, in the last couple of seasons, Arsenal have spent £150 million on Ben White, Aaron Ramsdale, and Pepe, and that's staggering. That is absolutely staggering. Now, I'm more of a fan of Aaron Ramsdale than I know Gaz is. I think he's a decent keeper, but there's just the recruitment is all over the shop. Like, it just, their recruitment was so good for so long, and I mean, listen, maybe that's just a pure testament to Wenger's eye, because he was exceptional, and he dug out these little gems out of France in particular. But it's just, it feels like the same old in nearly every season. Like, Martinez was there for years, and they needed a keeper. They needed a keeper after Lehmann, and just it wasn't happening. And then he goes off to Aston Villa and like one of the best keepers in the league. And Leno is actually quite good, but it's like this messed up jigsaw Rubik's cube, and they've got this guy. With all respect to Arteta, I believe he's a lovely guy, and Pep rates him. And Pep tried to make an excuse the other day that he's without some of his first team players like Partey, and that's fair, but it just looks so much more deep rooted than that. You've got Aubameyang, who doesn't really appear to want to be there. I really don't get the vibe that he wants to be there. Lacazette is fine. He's not exceptional. He's not excellent. He's fine, and it's just they seem to be on this merry-go-round that nobody seems to be able to get off of. And looking at them at the root in the bottom of the league, it's bizarre to look at, but then you're not surprised either anymore. Like Xhaka, like they're still dealing with Xhaka, and like he had a super Euros, and then it just has these stupid moments, like his sending off there the other day, and like Arsenal were lucky it wasn't 7 or 8, and against a City team that don't have a striker. My God, it doesn't look good. He can't last much longer. He can't. He won't see Christmas. Definitely won't see Christmas. Unless there's some magical turnaround. But I think maybe Pep rating him nearly gives him credit, and it should it shouldn't. His opinion on him shouldn't buy him time. So listen, I mean, if Arsenal don't want to see themselves in a relegation battle or hanging around the bottom end of the table, they need to do something, and I don't even really know what that is, but they're not doing it.
No, and obviously you mentioned Aaron Ramsdale there. Just a really quick question: do you think Ramsdale's a better goalkeeper than Leno? And if not, why do you spend 30 million on a backup goalkeeper?
No, I don't think he is better than Leno. The thing is, you learn a bit about a keeper when they're at the bottom end of the table, in fairness, because that's when they're going to be under the cosh most. When we were watching Dean Henderson at Sheffield United, we were watching him get promoted from the Championship, and then we were watching them creep up the table and then hang around like the Champions League spots in their first season up. So we knew that bringing Dean Henderson back was going to be a keeper who he didn't play like at a Liverpool or a Chelsea or a City, where they don't have as much to do as if you're playing for likes of Burnley. That's why the likes of Nick Pope is rated so highly, because when he's called into action, and he's going to be called into action regularly, he's going to be dealing with it more. You balance it up and kind of say, well, listen, their save percentage and all of that sort of stuff is going to be higher because they're going to be under the cosh more. But Henderson left Sheffield United and Ramsdale kind of stepped in. I think he did well. I don't think he's amazing. I think they got robbed on the transfer fee. 25 odd million pounds or 30 million euros is huge. That's like 10 million shy of what Juventus paid for Buffon all the years ago. That's just it's crazy. It's crazy money. But this is their decision making, their choices when it comes to their targets. And I mean, they went for an aging Willian a couple of years ago as well, and then and then we've been debating the whole contracts thing, and they messed up with Ozil, giving him a bumper contract, and then they've done it again with Aubameyang. Like, there's lots of decision making, and this is a club who were economically very astute. Like, for the longest time, they were one of the few clubs who were never hadn't a penny in debt. Like, they were so well run, and they never paid extortionate wages, and they never paid extortionate transfer fees, but they were clever. And, if you wanted to play for Arsenal, then you accepted a moderate wage, and you played for a club that had a history and had, a bit of football heritage about them. But, it's changed, and football's changed, and they're not going with it. So it's just, there's lots of really poor decision making in there. As I said, Leno is quite a good goalkeeper, but then again, you have to look at the four that are sitting in front of him, and I thank my lucky stars that we've invested so much better.
Yeah.
And just on that, Varane looks like a class act. Like, he always looked like a class act anyway, but there was worries about how he would take to the English game, and just like some of the stats from his first performance there, like you can tell, like, he's going to be like a rock in the back. Now, Maguire, obviously a great player as well when he wants to be, but having someone more reliable next to him is going to be fantastic just for the two of them and United's defence, and Arsenal just don't have that.
So just to finish up on the last couple of minutes, we might just touch on a couple of transfers or potential transfers with the window obviously closing tomorrow. Conor, can you see Chelsea doing any business? Jules Koundé, obviously, I think there's a 50 million bid in there. Don't know what way it's going at the moment, but is that the only bit of business you can see Chelsea doing?
Good question.
If it goes through.
So at the moment, just from what I've been reading and like on like Chelsea forums or whatever, the Koundé deal is after stalling. So a fee had been agreed with Sevilla, personal terms agreed a long time ago. They were just waiting for the Zuma deal to go through. And all of a sudden, rumour has it Sevilla are asking for 15 million more than originally agreed. And that's where Chelsea are considering not going through with it. Now, personally, I don't think Koundé is needed. Like, Chalobah can step up to the mark. Christensen, as we were saying, he's great. He's a fantastic young player. Could definitely develop into a great ball-playing defender. On one side of the back three, could be savage. But I'd be surprised now. Pleasantly surprised if he does sign, but I'd be surprised if it goes through in the next day, unless like that fee could go down. I think it could be floating around above 50 now. If they could get it down to 50, I think that could be a real win. And then the only other one I think may go through is Saul Niguez from Atletico Madrid. Now, there's not been much talk about that the last day or so, but there was rumblings before the weekend that a fee had been agreed to let him come on loan with an option to buy. And that's good because it's not an obligation to buy, which means, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. Chelsea are lacking someone to play as that fourth midfielder because Conte is injury prone. Kovacic is injury prone. You need someone else in there. So just by probability, I'd say Saul Niguez is the more likely, but I would not be surprised if neither come in. There might be a few more loanees going out, or like your Danny Drinkwaters who are still floating around in the squad, finally getting sold. But no, I'd say it'll be a quiet night for Chelsea tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I think Bakayoko went to AC Milan on another loan deal recently.
Finally gone,
well.
And there's an option to buy in there as well. Like that man was a shambles.
I'd say you're disappointed. There's no obligation to buy, but sure,
yeah,
we'll see how things work out. Dave, on the United front, question I suppose to you: can you see United pulling off any more surprises between now and transfer deadline day?
No, No, I don't. I don't see anything happening. Like, obviously, the Ronaldo deal is going to be announced. Dan James deal is going to be announced. But I think that's about. I think that's about it. I think the only other one that I thought might happen would have been Lingard, but we saw this evening that all the noises sound like he's seen Dan James go out the window, but either go, and we'll probably look at that as an opportunity to get more game time. I would have liked him to go. With all respect to Jesse, I think the lad needs to play every week. West Ham saw what he can do if he plays week in, week out, and he could really do well and get himself into the England World Cup squad, but doesn't look like he wants to do that. He wants to see if he can crack the United squad. I don't think he will. I think he'll get a few minutes here and there, but if the likes of Donny van de Beek can't get himself much time, then I don't see Jesse Lingard getting much more. So yeah, I think with securing the Ronaldo deal and Dan James making way, I think that'll be us done. I'd be shocked. Like if we brought someone else in, I'd be stunned. But stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have definitely happened on transfer deadline day. But as always, I suppose it's an exciting day in terms of there's always going to be some shock transfer. It mightn't necessarily be for Manchester United or Chelsea, but there's definitely going to be one spanner in the works there in terms of a transfer or a player controversially turning up at the training ground of what he thought was his new team, but for that transfer maybe not to go through. But Dave, Conor, lads, thanks as always for joining us, Dave. Conor, quality debut from yourself.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Definitely love to have you back on the podcast.
Absolutely,
especially to have that Chelsea's perspective as well, to battle with us Man United and Liverpool fans. But lads, as always, pleasure to have you on, and we will chat to you soon.